video too. So, welcome everyone to Chat with Sandy and Karen. I am talking with Jackie Whiting and Sandy Bansal, and we are just having a chat about education and teachers and life in general and what's going on in our parts of the world. I am calling from Central Texas, and Miss Jackie, where are you?
I am in southwestern Connecticut.
Awesome. And Sandy?
In icy, cold Gothenburg. Sweden. Gothenburg in America, right?
Well,
I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
Gothenburg?
Okay. Sandy, I have to ask you something. So
Okay.
we met in the fall of 2017.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how many places you've lived since then.
I've only been to Italy. So,
Okay. But you're in a new professional role.
Oh yeah. Loads of jobs in between.
Yeah.
Like get my hands dirty, want to know what's happening everywhere, and
Yeah. Well, you two are some of the biggest movers and shakers I've had a privilege to meet. So I am so thrilled to know both of you and to be friends, to connect like this, and to follow social media with all of the amazing stuff that the two of you do with your day jobs, your side gigs, and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you for having me this morning.
Sweet.
Well, it's morning where I am, Sandy. It's not morning where you are.
We appreciate you.
yeah.
And this is a very big episode. We have 10 followers 10 subscriptions on YouTube. So, Jackie, you can share this with all of your friends, and then we'll get some people following us. So
yeah, we'll do. Yeah. I'm excited to talk with you this morning about all of this, as I was thinking over the last, obviously many months, but with this particular conversation in mind, thinking over the last few weeks, and we were talking about student engagement as the focus for the conversation today. I've been really intently having conversations with different educators. So I hope that a lot of people are able to listen to this conversation and take something away that gives them just a little boost forward in their practice, and one more step past a hurdle or obstacle that they're facing, because we're all facing them. And it's only when we come together for these conversations that we really can just pick each other's brains for all of our and our students' benefit.
Right. Absolutely. And I know that your position now is to help educators with the challenges that they're experiencing. Could you want to talk a little bit about that, and then
Sure. Yeah. So back when I first met the two of you, I was transitioning from being a high school social studies teacher to being a high school library media specialist. So I had been in the classroom for 23 years, and then spent 4 years working as a library media specialist. And now I've just finished my first year working as essentially an instructional coach and a professional learning coordinator. So my title is Innovation and Technology Specialist, which is really a quite large term for all of the different things that I do. But it really boils down to designing and implementing, facilitating professional learning experiences, and also doing one-on-one and small group long-term coaching with teams of teachers, which has really been, I think, an essential way for teachers to get support through this time period that we're existing in and surviving and enduring. I think coaching sometimes gets a bad rap for some people, or at least in education circles. And the way I think of it is, the people who are at the top of their field, whether they are actors or vocalists or athletes, they all have coaches. They have lifelong relationships with coaches. And that's not an indication of their incompetence. It's an indication of their potential, right? And that coach helps them to continuously improve and try new techniques and try new strategies and reflect on them. And so that's what my role is with educators these days. We get together, we celebrate successes, and then identify some pain points that we can work together on mitigating, whether that's through trying new instructional strategies or identifying and practicing a new technology platform. The goal is that we can actually collect quantifiable data on how student learning is improving in response to instructional changes that an educator might be making.
What is the engagement like, do you think? Or have you seen the engagement of your students, learners, higher or lower if you were face-to-face or online?
So that's a great question, because people get into teaching. I think they get into teaching because they are lifelong learners themselves, right? And so as educators whose their teaching environment has changed so radically, so has their learning environment changed. So it is a good gauge for me how engaged my adult participants in my sessions are, whether or not the strategies I'm using are going to be useful for them in their classrooms, right? So, so I'm learning more and more about remote delivery of professional learning. There's a huge demand by educators for this kind of support and this kind of help. Once I engage in a coaching session with just one session with a student, with an educator, they really respond to me, "I'm so sorry I resisted this for so long. If I had just started this 2 months ago, 4 months ago, last March." And my response is, "But you're here now, right? It's everybody's on their own learning curve of a journey here." So I do find that teachers are finding it incredibly helpful and incredibly useful to have a trusting person that they can vent to, ask questions of, be vulnerable with, in order to learn themselves. So I'm finding that there's a lot of demand for the work that I'm doing.
That's great. Yeah, the coach is a good guy. The
Yeah.
coach is for you.
Yeah.
And
The coach isn't reporting to the good coach doing their job well, not reporting to your administrator, not evaluating. It is a thought partner, really, really and truly. It's a pedagogical thought partner. I defer to the teachers that I'm working with as the experts in their content area. And together, what we're working on is the best instructional strategies for helping students to master that teachers' discipline content and develop the skills that they need. And really, if you think about it, I remember, way back when, October 2017, when we were talking about preparing students for the jobs that don't exist yet. We don't even know what the jobs are. How do we prepare them to be future ready? And we'd list all those things that I hate when people call them soft skills, because to me, they're anything but soft, right? But that ability to be the ability to think flexibly, to be comfortable with ambiguity, to communicate in multiple formats with different people of different interest groups, to develop empathy with people whose experiences are so different than your own. Those things that we thought of as important skills for us to teach students so they would be future ready, they are our survival skills right now, right? I mean, this circumstance is forcing all of us to grow in those capacities. And I say that because one of the things that I always ask people when I'm having conversations with them is, let's start with what's going well. Let's start with the bright points, because there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of anger right now. But I think we're also all having successes in our own ways. And we also need to pause and celebrate that and acknowledge that and congratulate ourselves for that. And sometimes when I'm in a conversation, I was in a conversation with a teacher yesterday who couldn't think of anything that was going well. We had a 40-minute coaching session. And at the end of the coaching session, she said, "You know what?" And then she started to rattle off the things that were going well, but she
Yay.
needed that permission to pause and be okay with congratulating herself for ways in which she was being resilient and helping her students to be resilient. Right. And that's what it comes down to. Say that again, Sandy.
It's not seen, is it, by anyone? It's just teach online.
Well, and isn't that interesting, right? Because back in March, almost a year ago, schools started closing, teachers were teaching from home, students were learning from home, and this remote schooling was this brand new experience. People who were in a role like mine were just doing triage to try to keep people afloat, keep people going day to day. Sometimes it was class to class during a day.
Yeah.
I met with a teacher during the beginning of the shutdown last year, and I asked how she was doing, and she said, well, I've only cried twice so far today, and that's really good. Right. I mean, that's where people were back in March. And I think that unfortunately what happened is when, particularly around the States, because I know it's been different in different parts of the world, when we tried reopening schools in the fall, we sent people back and said, okay, some of you at least are going back to school, but we weren't going back to school. We were going back to desks and rows with plexiglass and masks and social distancing and an inability to collaborate and huddle over an experiment or a STEAM project or a maker project or a problem we were trying to solve. We didn't go back. We went into a different brick and mortar teaching paradigm, and teachers had to adjust to that. And some people went into a hybrid or concurrent paradigm. And it's not fair to say to a teacher, well, you've been doing this since March. You know how to teach students remotely. Teaching students remotely and students brick and mortar concurrently isn't the same thing. So the grounds keep shifting under teachers and under students, and we have to keep adjusting to that. And that's exhausting. It's really exhausting. You know? So, and you talked about the engagement of teachers in the work that I'm doing. And the biggest thing I hear from teachers and administrators is their concern about their students' level of engagement, right? I mean, and that's a huge term, right? Student engagement. And I ask people to pause for a minute when they say they have a student engagement problem. Without using the term student engagement, describe the problem again. Like, what is it that you see or hear, or what is it that you don't see or don't hear that you're describing as a student engagement problem? And now we can start to really dig into what are the root causes or the underlying factors that are either preventing the positive behaviors that you want to see, or encouraging or instigating maybe negative behaviors that you're trying to eliminate, because different students are having different levels of engagement for different reasons, right? We need to really dig into what those reasons are. We're differentiating in all new ways that we might never have been considering before all of this.
Yeah. I've given lessons where I'm just talking to myself, I'm not really, I think all teachers want engagement. They crave that, because especially when in the online environment, because you got to get that feedback to, the nodding head or the puzzled expression or something where, someone waves and says, I don't understand that, or some indication. So I think that the engagement is, it's key. It's, and, teachers have been trying to find the right method, and is there really a one method? Is there
right? There was never one method, right? There isn't one method when I'm working with adults. There wasn't one method back before COVID was even something that we were aware of, right? There were always different methods. We just need a bigger tool set now. Teaching in this way. And I think it's interesting when you talk about like the nodding head or the furrowed brow or something like that, right? The body, trying to read body language when all you can see is from the shoulders up, right? and that's, to me, more than the classroom that we're missing. It's all of those other informal interactions that we used to have that really helped us to gauge how someone was doing or get to know who someone was, right? It was the conversations that you would have with students as you walked through the cafeteria or at their lockers in the morning, or when they were, unpacking their materials on their desk when they came in. It's, or, when I was a library media specialist, as you just walked around the library and people came up and sat at your desk and chatted with you for a little while. Those kinds of interactions were really, I think, an important part of our relationship building. They were times when people could be more vulnerable because the conversations were a little more personal and a little more intimate, in that 20 other students or 25 other students in a classroom weren't watching or listening to it. And so it really was an authentic interaction between somebody who's coaching and nurturing learning and someone who is learning how to be a learner, right? And without that, we need a whole new set of strategies for helping students to be candid and open with us and make their thinking visible to us, document things that normally we wouldn't not necessarily have asked them to document because we had other ways of getting that information from them. So some of the things, some of the practices of teaching students to be really metacognitive have always been so important. Incorporating mindfulness practices into our classroom experiences have always been so important, but it's really hard when I have conversations and I hear someone say, I just don't have time for, and the thing they want to cut is the mindfulness or the metacognition, because I just have to get through this content. And you're not going to get through the content without the mindfulness and without the metacognition, because when the students make their thinking visible to you, explain to you things that they're trying and whether or not they think it's working and how they're monitoring and adjusting for their own learning, your instruction can never be as deeply effective as it would be with that information. So that's one of the key pieces of advice that I give to people. And it's then how you can build these relationships with people remotely, because students do know you care. You aren't saying, I really care about you. You're showing and you're making space for that care to happen. And that's so important and so essential.
That's right. I think as on the human level, that's what we all want, is that human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, teachers are investing so much time and so much energy. And with teachers I'm talking to, their own money in buying equipment for their classroom to try to make things work better. And I think that teachers need to be celebrated for that. And I think teachers need to give themselves the permission to slow that pace down a little bit. We can compact curriculum, we can monitor for student learning, and we can provide students extra learning opportunities where necessary going forward. But it's much harder to repair the human being on the inside. And that time invested now will make that remediation or gap filling or whatever terminology people use, will make it that much better if we've made the investment in the human being right now. And I think at our core, we all know that. We just can't even pause in our daily life long enough to give each other that permission. Teachers giving their colleagues that permission, administrators giving teachers that permission, and having candid conversations, administrator to teacher, school to family and community, about what our priority is going to be and why that's going to be our priority.
Jackie, so in schools there now, do the teachers have to still teach the full content of the curriculum, or are they giving, leeways?
Yeah, so with the teachers that I'm working with, it varies from district to district. So there are some school districts that over the summer tried to do some curriculum compacting work. There are some that chose certain content that just won't be addressed in certain grade levels, and will deal with it in the next grade level, kind of thing. And then there are some teachers who are implementing the curriculum as it exists through the new remote teaching circumstance, or hybrid, or I like the word concurrent teaching circumstance, where some of your students are at home and some of your students are in the classroom and you're teaching both at the same time. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm doing that I did that from August, and then we shut down, and now I think we're going to start that again next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what's happening in a lot of places around here, is that even when schools are reopening with the intention of being fully back in the school building itself, there are significant percentages of the family communities that are saying my child's not going back for whatever reason it has to be, because of their own health concerns, vulnerabilities with people in the family. And so even if the school is fully open, all of the students aren't there. I'm working with a teacher now. I'm working with her whole department, and her school is fully open, but with an enrollment of about 20 people in each of her courses. Some days there are only 3 of those students are actually in the building and 17 are home. And that can change from day to day. It can change from week to week, and it definitely changes from course to course. So preparing instruction for that circumstance is really, really difficult. Really difficult.
That's public school?
That's public school. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And teachers have they have a lot of strategies to use, just as we do in our professional work, or a principal who's holding a faculty meeting in a virtual conferencing setup and sends people into breakout rooms and does all of that kind of stuff, and then says to teachers, just send students into breakout rooms, right? Let them have small group conversations, and we've all done this. I can see the two of you laughing. Like I don't have enough digits on my hands and my toes to count the number of times I've been sent into a breakout room and told we have 5 minutes to talk about a topic. And we're told what that topic is as the person is clicking, send you to breakout rooms.
Yeah.
And so we get into the breakout rooms and we sit and we stare at each other for about a minute. Some people pick up their phones. And after about a minute, people start introducing themselves if they don't know each other, or chatting and catching up because we've been distanced from one another for so long. And that goes on for a couple of minutes until somebody says, what were we sent here to talk about? And then everybody tries to remember. And we're down to about 45 seconds left before the first person actually starts to talk about what you're supposed to be talking about. And then you're back into the main room, and they want somebody to share out what happened in your breakout room. Nothing happened in my breakout room. We don't have anything to share. Right? So I take a lesson from that. And one of the suggestions that I give to teachers when I'm working with them is, let's say it's Monday and I'm meeting with a group of students, and my intention is that when they come back with me on Tuesday, I'm going to put them in breakout rooms for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it happens to be for my lesson. On Monday, I'm going to tell the students, tomorrow, I'm putting you in breakout rooms. And while you're there, this is what you're going to be doing, or this is what you're going to be talking about. So they're not hearing the prompt 15 seconds before they have to talk about the prompt, right? If we were doing this in class, we might have students journal or free write about a topic before we have them turn and talk with a partner or a small group of students. So how do we adapt for that in a remote setting? Pre-frame them significantly ahead of time so that they've been mulling that over. And even if they're not in the front of their brain thinking about the topic, it's in the back of their head. You've said it, you've planted the seed, which means when they go into the breakout rooms, they're a little bit more prepared to be having that conversation. And I think it's really important to not send students to breakout rooms just for the sake of breakout rooms. If there isn't a reason for them to be there, then nothing productive is going to happen there. But giving students something to do in a breakout room, not something to talk about, means they're automatically going to be talking about the content you want them to talk about, because they have to talk about it in order to do the thing you've given them to do. And it doesn't have to be a race, that this breakout room against that breakout room or something like that. I like the idea of sending 2 or 3 students into a breakout room. If you're a math teacher, like say teaching algebra, and you give them x equals 2 as the most basic equation there is, right? In each breakout room, they get a really, really simple equation. And their job is to keep the equation balanced and make it as complex as possible. And they do that work together. Then they come back into the big breakout room and they swap equations. Go back into their little breakout room, and now you try to solve the equation that some other group made. And so they're talking together and they're problem solving together around the work that you're doing. So I think it's important to be really, really planful about the use of that as an instructional strategy.
That's great. Excellent. Yeah, we were just talking about breakout rooms, but that's a really specific suggestion. That it's a coaching suggestion. I appreciate that. That hardcore idea. I mean, it's great. A lot of times we just get all amorphous and say, "Oh, it'll solve everything." We just,
yeah,
it's not that way. You got to exactly, like you said, specifically plan for the use of it.
Right. Another thing that I've been doing is recommending partner reading to teachers. So if you have a reading for a student and you put that reading in a Google Doc, and then pair your students by common reading level, and give them certain things, just one or two things that you want them to annotate for while they're reading. So maybe they want to, maybe it's highlight the important things you want to remember when the reading is finished and insert a comment as to why it's important. And then anytime you want to ask a compelling question, you're wondering something, insert a comment with what you're wondering. And as students read it the first time, they're annotating. They read it a second time and they're responding to their reading partner's annotations. So they're having a dialogue about the reading alongside the reading, tied directly to the parts of the reading that are inspiring the conversation. So now if you want to come together as a whole class and have a synchronous conversation about that reading, you've got the students' questions and talking points as the focus of that discussion. So it really is a student-centered discussion. It's not, we're going to talk about what matters to me in the reading. We're talking about what mattered to you in the reading. And I also have a way to draw those reluctant students into the conversation. I'm not going to put them on the spot and say, so Karen, what do you think? Because you're going to blush and turn your camera off. And right? But I can say, Karen, you said this really, really interesting thing about a time where you were disengaged and then became re-engaged. I think the class really could benefit from hearing a little bit more about that. Can you tell us about it? So I validated your thinking. I gave you your talking point. And even if you just repeat what I said, you've taken a step into contributing in a conversation when prior to that, you wouldn't do that at all. And I think that's really important. It goes back to that mindfulness and relationship building, that I'm validating what my students know and can do.
So important, mindfulness. Okay. Jackie, it's my nephew's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So my sister's we've got a Zoom pie and she's already changed it twice.
So
it's so nice listening to you.
Thank you.
So I want to carry on listening to the rest of this. It's really good. And as we're online, I'm going to interrupt and say, follow us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google. I think we're all of them at Chat WSK1. And catch up with everyone next week.
All right.
Bye, Sandy. We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you, Sandy. See you later. Jackie, thank you. This is really cool coaching. I'm excited.
Thank you.
You are a good model of what a coaching session would be, because you were talking about the problem and then giving some suggestions. And I just think that is so useful. That's fabulous. That's good. Do you have something else you would like to discuss, or shall we wait till part 2?
Well, why don't we wait till part 2? I hate to miss Sandy in the conversation also.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So we'll do that off camera, but I just wanted to thank you so much again. And your Twitter handle is at MSJ Whiting.
You got it.
In the parentheses, she, her. Is that part of the name? Is that all?
No, I just always share how I identify. I think it's important that we all acknowledge it and make it just a part of how we get to know each other.
Just a regular part. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to end the broadcast now. And thanks again to the listeners. We appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.